Okay, so after talking about the life tables and the survivorship curves, now I'll move to the next point, that is the exponential model for the population growth. Now, this particular kind of model is useful to study population growth in an idealized situation. So, what the ideal situation is that the population can be defined in an area. It's not that the insects and birds they can move in and out. So that particular area which is defined as a fixed number of individuals and that remains static during the study of the idealized situation help us understand the capacity of a species to increase and the conditions that may facilitate this growth. So this particular kind of model, it can be used where the population growth is kind of monitored. So this will help us to understand how the species they are increasing or they are decreasing and what is the reason behind the increase or decrease of a particular species. Now there's another term which is called as the per capita rate of increase. So whenever we talk about change in the population size, so that change in population size, if you remember from previous slides, we talked about that the population increases because of two reasons. Number one is the birth and second is the immigration. So we can say birth plus immigration of new individuals leads to increase and death along with the immigrants who are leaving the population leads to decrease. So these two will be added and these two, death and immigration, will be subtracted. So that will be that can say it is the change in the population size. So if immigration and immigration are ignored, let's say for example, if only few people are coming, so there's a population of let's say 100,000 and in that particular population only 2 or 3 people are coming. So that's a very small number and which can be ignored. And similarly, if there are only 2 and 3 people living, so that number can also be ignored. So if immigration and emigration are ignored, a population growth rate will depend on the birth and the death. So immigration and emigration will not play any role. The major role will be played by the birth and the death. So if we say that change in population will be equivalent to birth minus death, so we can say that the population growth rate can be expressed mathematically as delta n upon delta t, where delta n is the change in the population size, delta t is the time interval. So let's say 2 months or 3 months, whatever the time interval is, and where which is equivalent to birth capital B minus capital D, which is the number of deaths. So at any specific time point, let's say after 2 months, after 3 months, or after 2 years, if we want to investigate the change in the population size, then one need to monitor the birth and the deaths. So birth will lead to increase and death will lead to decrease in the population size. So birth and deaths, they can be expressed as the average number of birth and average number of death per individual during the specified time interval. So birth will equals to small b n, where bn is the per capita birth rate and small m is the stands for mortality. It is the per capita death rate. So per capita, so we can say that for every individual, how many new individuals are being born, and for every individuals, how many individuals are dead. So depending on what is the average number of birth and what is the average number of death, we can calculate. So birth is annual per capita birth rate and death is annual per capita mortality. So if you want to now, we can replace this birth and death by the per capita birth and the per capita mortality. So we can revise this equation delta n by delta t equals to bn minus mn. So the per capita rate of increase is given by r equals to b minus m. So now there's a concept of zero population growth. So zero population growth occurs when the birth rate equals to the death rate. So in a specific population, let's say there's a population of turtles in a small pond where the total number at a given point is 100. Now, let's say 2 or 3 months down the lane, 5 turtles, they were born and 5 turtles, they died. So we can say there is the number of population remains the same. That is 5 added and 5 subtracted. So we call it the zero population growth. So here the birth was 5, mortality was 5, and R becomes automatically 0. So the change in population size, now it can be written as delta n by delta equals to Rn. And again, if at any time we want to know the instantaneous growth rate, so that can be expressed by del dn by dt equals to r instantaneous n. So at any time point, at any instant we want to know the population, this particular formula can be used. So this r is the instantaneous per capita rate of increase. Now there's another term, this is called the exponential growth. So exponential population growth is the population increase under idealized conditions. So idealized conditions means that the population is not under any kind of threat. They are not under any kind of predation. They are having good supply of nutrients. They are having good supply of food, water, and other resources. So that population is kind of under idealized conditions. So under these conditions, the rate of increase is at its maximum. So any population, if it's given ideal conditions, it will be having maximum growth. So that can be denoted as R equals to max, R max. Now this R max can be replaced into the old formula dn by dt equals to R max into n. So this is the equation for the exponential population growth. So look at this particular graph here. So here what we have is we have number of generations on the x-axis and we have population size on the y-axis. So we can see the numbers 500, 1000, 1500 and 2000. So here are two specific curves. The blue one which is giving dn by dt equals to 1. The red one which is giving dn by dt equals to 0.5. So the exponential growth curve is usually a J-shaped curve. So the higher this particular value, the more sharper, the more steeper will be the curve. So in a way, we can say that this particular population, the blue population, is showing more growth as compared to the red population. Okay, so the J-shaped curve of exponential growth characterizes some rebounding populations as well. Now, there's a one example here which is showing that there was a Kruger National Park. It was in South Africa. So there the elephants, they were being hunted and their number went down. So it was around 1904 or 5 that there was a ban on hunting. Now, because of the ban, you can see that from 1900 to about 1965, the population of elephant increased exponentially. So you can see the numbers here, 2, 4, 6, and 8. So it almost reached up to 8,000 elephants. So the conditions, they are kind of ideal now. They are not being hunted. There's enough availability of food, water, sunlight. So this population showed exponential growth, and what we received is a J-shaped curve. So this is a kind of characteristic of a exponential growth curve. Now there's another one, which is the logistic model. So it describes how a population grows more slowly as it nears its carrying capacity. So carrying capacity means that, let's say for example, there is a classroom. So in that classroom, there's a capacity of seating 50 students. So till the time we have 5 or 10 students, they can easily come and fit and sit anywhere. Now till 40, 45, even 50, we can easily accommodate all the 50 students. Now let's say 5 more students come. So if we have a bench kind of seats, then maybe we can adjust. And now again 5 students, they are coming. So it's kind of, we can say that the carrying capacity of that particular classroom is 50 students only. And the number of students that can be accommodated now will be really less. So similarly, in, let's say, growth media or in a specific area where the population that can be sustained is defined by the availability of the resources. The resources, that is, let's say, food or water. So if the availability of food is quite large, it's quite sufficient, then it can support, let's say, 5,000 cows or buffaloes. But if the number keeps on increasing, so then of course it will affect the growth of that particular population. Why? Because the availability of food is still the same. So the more the animals, they will keep on eating more and more food, they will keep on utilizing more and more resources. And at some point of time, there will be less resources and more animals. So now this more animals, their growth will be limited because of the lesser availability of the resources. So in a way, in any system, the exponential growth cannot be sustained for long, be it a forest area or be it a lab. Even in a culture flask, whenever you would be doing any kind of bacterial growth experiments, so there also you will see that there will be exponential growth phase and then there will be a stationary growth phase. So that stationary growth phase, it will be because that the resources which are available in the culture flask, they have been utilized up to the optimum. And now there's less and less availability of the nutrients that could sustain the growth of the bacteria. A more realistic population model limits growth by incorporating the carrying capacity. So if we let's say define or limit the population model by incorporating another factor which is called the carrying capacity. So it is the carrying capacity could be defined as the maximum population size that the environment can support. So if there is a mass which could support 50 students, so in that mass, if 100 students come to eat, then there's a problem. So the food which is available for 50 students, either it will be divided among those 100 students. So all 100 students, they will not be fully satisfied. So the similar thing could be speculated to a forest or to an environment. So in a region, if the carrying capacity is of 100,000 animals, so that needs to be monitored. That needs to be taken into account if any logistic growth needs to be monitored. So carrying capacity varies with the abundance of limiting resources. Now, what is the availability of resources? It will dictate the carrying capacity of the individuals. So let's say, for example, we can talk about the different parts of India itself. So in Rajasthan, so we have a lesser availability of moisture. The soil is not that nutrients. So now because of that, there is lesser and lesser growth of plants and trees. Now because of that, we have lesser number of birds and animals as well. Even the human population is also less compared to other states where there's the availability of natural resources is more. Let's say, for instance, in Uttar Pradesh. So in UP, the soil, the water availability is better. Now, because of that, the plants and animals are more, and even the human population is also more. So in a way, we can say that in a specific, let's say, area of 10 square kilometers, in these two different states, the carrying capacity in UP will be more as compared to the carrying capacity in Rajasthan. So the logistic growth model, in the logistic population growth model, the per capita rate of increase declined as the carrying capacity is reached. So what does it mean? That if, let's say, the carrying capacity of that particular area is 1000 animals, so let's say that particular field, it could support feeding 1000 cows. So now as the carrying capacity of 1000 cows reaches, let's say initially there was 100 cows, now they keep on dividing. So if it's reaching, let's say 900 or 950, so there now from there the rate of increase will be really less. So the logistic model starts with the exponential model and adds an expression that reduces per capita rate of increase as n approaches k. So here we introduce another term, the carrying capacity. So dn by dt equals to r max into n. So k minus n upon k. So this is the new term which has been introduced. Okay, so let's have a look onto this a particular table. So here the first column depicts the population size. The second is the maximum rate of increase, which is the R max. Then we have this carrying capacity, K minus N by K. Then we have this per capita rate of increase, which is R max K minus N by K. Then we can have this population growth. So this is a kind of the whole formula which was in the previous slide. R max N equals to K minus N by K. So what does K is? The K here is the hypothetical population, which is the 1500. So in an area, only 1500 population could be supported. So initially there was only 25 individuals, and it keeps on increasing from 25 to 1500. So if you look down here, so initially from 25 to 100, so let's say this 0.98, so the value is going down as the number is reaching towards its carrying capacity, which is about 1500. And here, ultimately, when the population has reached up to 1500, there is no per capita rate in increase. There is not at all increase, and even the population growth rate is also zero. So the maximum population growth that could be observed was from 500 to 1000. This is 333 or 375 times. So once it is quite close, let's say 1000, again it drops from 375 to 333. And when it is 100, it's 1500, it's zero. So what does it mean? So it means that in a population, if in an area, if the carrying capacity of that particular environment is 1500, so the population will increase, and ultimately when it reaches towards the carrying capacity, it will decrease. So at the end, there will be no increase when the carrying capacity has been reached. So this logistic model of population growth produces a sigmoid curve. So this was the exponential and this is the logistic model. So here we have this dn by dt equals to 1n 1500 minus n upon n. So it is kind of depiction of what we saw in the previous table. Okay, so let's see some examples of the logistic model and real populations. So the growth of laboratory population of Pharmacia fits an S-shaped curve. So there were two organisms, they were grown under laboratory conditions. So one is the Paramecium and the another one is the Dapnia. So this Paramecium and Dapnium, now you may understand that when we are growing in the laboratory condition, there is no predators and there is no competitors. So the only competitors are they themselves. So there is no other species which will be competing, or there is no other stronger or bigger species that would be killing, predating, or feeding onto it. So in a kind of so that conditions are almost kind of ideal. And also in a laboratory setup, we tend to provide sufficient amount of nutrients, sufficient amount of water, sunlight, and other resources which are needed for the growth and development. Now, these two populations, they were grown for specific time duration. So let's say, for example, in case of Paramecium, it was allowed to grow up to around 20 days. So so initially, the number was quite low. There were only a couple of Paramecium they were introduced in the flask. And now as the time passes by, the number of Paramecium grows. So initially you can see the number is going up to 1000. So from let's say 800 or 850, now there is not such a growth. The number goes down. Why? Because the flask that was having the Paramecium, so let's say the flask was having 100 ml. So per ml, they were around 850 per ml. So once it's reached around 1000, there is totally no growth. So that has reached up to its carrying capacity. Now let's see another example here, the example of Daphnia. So in Daphnia, we are taking the Daphnia per 50 ml. And the time duration is a little bit longer, from 0 to about 180 days. So this population initially goes up and then suddenly it comes down. So it is quite possible that this particular organism, they keep on dividing, keep on utilizing the resources which are available in that particular media. And once that particular media resources being utilized, and also they are excreting their waste products. So now those waste products being utilized, they may kill some of the Daphnia, some of the organisms, and the number comes down. So some populations, they overshoot K before settling down to a relatively stable density. So here, this overshoot here is kind of, you can see that at about day 70 to 80, they were more than 180 or 190 individuals per 50 ml. And eventually the state line could be achieved. So it was 120 or 130 organisms per 50 ml. So some population fluctuate greatly and make it difficult to define K. So in Daphnia, in case of Paramecium, there was no fluctuation. However, in case of Daphnia, there was a one fluctuation. The number went above the carrying capacity and it again came down. However, there are a couple of cases where the numbers could fluctuate. The population could be, they will probably could be a zigzag-like growth. So that makes it difficult to define the carrying capacity. So some populations show an allele effect in which individuals have a more difficult time surviving or reproducing if the population size is too small. So now it depends. Some of the alleles, they could be deleterious to the organisms. So those individuals, they may not grow, they may not survive well, they may not reproduce. So their number will usually go down. So the logistic model fits few real population, but is useful for estimating possible growth. So in real life, if we monitor the growth of different individuals like Daphnia, Paramecium, tigers, lions, so it is quite possible that only few organisms could cover or could fall into this particular model. However, this particular model could be used for estimating the possible growth. So we may speculate that, let's say, in 5 years, the number of tigers in Gir forest increased to 50. So now what could be the growth of the tigers in next 10 years? So that kind of speculations, that kind of estimates could be made. So conservation biologists, they can use the model to estimate the critical size below which populations may become extinct. So now these kind of models, they could be used by the biologists, by the environmentalists to predict that what population of species is going down, which needs to be preserved. If not done, then maybe in near future, it may totally extinct from the surface of the earth. So life history traits, they are products of natural selection. An organism's life history comprises the traits that affect its schedule of reproduction and survival. So the age at which reproduction begins, how often the organism reproduces, and how many offsprings are produced during each reproductive cycle. So that is usually studied under the life history of an organism. So the life history traits, they are evolutionary outcomes reflected in the development, physiology, and behavior of an organism. So species that exhibit smell parity or Big Bang reproduce, they just reproduce once and die. So now the cost of reproducing for these particular organisms is that much that they just can reproduce only once. And after reproduce once, these species, they die. So there's only one kind of one generation or one offspring is being brought up. Now there are species that exhibit heteroparity or repeated reproduction. Now they can produce offsprings repeatedly. So these are the case of most of the plants and animals. And even bacteria, virus, and those, they kind of come into this particular category. So they can produce their species, they can reproduce again and again. So highly variable or unpredictable environments likely to favor Big Bang reproduction. Now, there are environmental conditions which are highly variable or unpredictable. So there only Big Bang reproduction could be there. While those environments which are dependable, where you can predict that now it will be summer for 2 months, now followed by rainy season, followed by winter season. So those kind of predictable or dependable environment, they may favor repeated reproduction. So ultimately, it is the environment which is determining that what would be the kind of reproduction. It will be smell parity or it will be heteroparity. That could be exhibited by the individuals of that particular area. So this is one typical example of an agave plant. So its full name is Agave americana. So this full plant, this is an example of a big bag reproduction. So this particular plant only reproduces once in its lifetime, and after producing its species, the next generation, this plant dries out. It dies. So now we talk about another term which is called the trade-offs and the life histories. So organisms, they have finite resources which may lead to trade-off between survival and reproduction. So finite resource means that the availability of the food, even the finite resource in terms of, let's say, their age of fertility, that could also be defined as the finite source here. So it is quite possible that there could be trade-off between the survival and the reproduction. So those organisms or those individuals which reproduce more, they kind of trade off their reproducibility with their life. So if they are reproducing more, their lifespan is reduced. So it has been studied that those organisms who produce more and more offsprings, they survive less. Their lifespan is less. So there is an example of European kestrels here. So you can look at the number here. So this is the parents surviving the winter. So this is on the y-axis from 0 to 100. And on the x-axis, we have this brood size. So brood size means that how much time they reproduce. So if they have normal brood size, if the reproduction is normal, so it is quite possible that around 60%, around 60% of both male and female, they will survive the winters. And if the brood size is less, then there will be around 85% of males, they will survive, and all 100% of females, they will survive. Now, if the brood size is large, I mean, the more reproduction is there. So it means that only around 30% of males, they will survive, and the females, they will be around 50%. So from this particular study, it could be speculated that the reproduction is dictating the lifespan of the individual. In a normal case, where they are producing the normal number of offsprings, their lifespan is around 60%. The 60% of the species, they could survive the winters. However, when the reproduction rate is low, so when the number of species, let's say the males, the survival is 85 to 90%. However, in case of females, the whole 100% females, they survive. And if the reproduction rate is more, then the survival is very low. In case of males, it's only about 30%, whereas in case of females, it's about 50%. So some plants, they produce a large number of small seeds, ensuring that at least some of them will grow and eventually reproduce. So just, it's a kind of environmental adaptation that these plants, they produce lots of seeds. Now there is a different thing that these seeds, how they will be dispersed. So in this particular example here, this figure, dandelion. So here it has these are very feather-like structures which are attached with each and every seed. So as the wind blows, this particular feather-like structure will facilitate the dispersal of the seeds. So they will be carried away by the wind. So other type of plants, they produce a moderate number of large seeds that provide a large store of energy that will help seedlings become established. Now there are a lot of trees here. Let's say, for example, this Brazil nut tree seeds in a seed pod. These are seeds here, and this is a tree. So the bigger the seed, the more is the storage of food inside that particular seed. Now, because of that storage of food, the chances of survival of that particular plant is more. The seed is having enough storage that, and also the protection of that particular seed inside the shell is such that it could easily bypass the harsh conditions. And after the bypass of harsh condition, when the ideal conditions come, let's say the availability of moisture, humidity, and temperature, it will grow, it will develop into a sapling and will grow into a fully matured tree. So these kind of trees, they produce small or a moderate number of large seeds. So now we have two different kind of selections. So we can have K selection or R selection. So K selection is the density dependent selection. So this selects for life stage traits that are sensitive to population density. So let's say, for example, in a particular area, so if the population density will be low, so the life history traits will be dictated by that particular low density population, or if it is high, then that will also dictate the life history traits. Now there are another selection which is called the R selection. This is a density independent selection. So it selects for life state that maximize reproduction. So it doesn't matter what is the population size. The process of the life state trait will be carried as such. It will not depend what the population is. So here, this particular R selection favors the maximum growth. The concept of K selection and R selection, they are over simplifications, but have a stimulated alternative hypothesis of life history evolution. So there are many factors that regulate population growth, which are density dependent. So let's see some of these factors here. So in a density dependent population, birth rate and death rate, they do not change with population density. So let's say, for example, we can see this particular graph here. So on the x-axis, we have this population density. On the y-axis, we have birth or the death rate per capita. So this particular red line, this is the density independent death rate. So it doesn't matter what is the population density. The birth rate or the death rate will be constant. And now this blue one, this is the density dependent. So here we have this density dependent birth rate. So in this particular area, if we look into, now we can divide this into 4 different quadrants. So in these 4 different quadrants, what we see is, let's say here, so when the population is low, so at that particular time here, the population is low, so it will be fast till it reaches the carrying capacity or the maximum population that can be accommodated in that particular area. So here we can say that the birth will be more than the mortality. Now look at this second quadrant here. So here the population density is high. So if the population density is high, the mortality will be high as compared to the birth. So unless this population shrinks. So in a way, all we have to do is that we try to, in this particular, the population tries to achieve the equilibrium here. So the density independent here it is not being affected by the birth or death. I mean, this birth or death or the B or M, it is not affected by the population size in case of density independent. However, in case of density dependent, it will be there. So mechanisms of density dependent population regulation. So density dependent birth and death rates, they are an example of negative feedback that regulate the population growth. So you might have studied in physiology also. So let's say, for example, any of the hormone, uh, let's say thyroid gland, it secretes a thyroxine. So when this specific level of thyroxine is reached, so that will regulate a negative feedback. It will give a negative feedback to the thyroid gland that the sufficient amounts are there. Now you don't need to secrete more. So there will be kind of negative feedback, negative stimulus, although there's a whole loop involved. So the similar kind of thing will be here. So in a density dependent birth and rate, there will be negative feedback system. So if the population is low, the birth will be more and the death will be less. If the population is high, the birth will be less and the death will be more. So in a density dependent birth and death rates, they are affected by many factors. Now, what are those factors? So those factors could be competition for resource. So that, of course, all of us know that when there is availability of limited resources. So one of the resources, food and water. So food and water, if they are available in limited quantities, so it can only support limited number of individuals. So if the number of individuals grows, then obviously they will compete, they will fight amongst themselves for the food. Then comes the territoriality. So all the individuals, they tend to define their territory, their area in which they would like to survive. Then comes the disease. So that is also one of the important parameters. So if the population is really dense, then in that particular area, disease will be less. Even there, it has been noticed in different kind of pandemics that those areas where the population of animals, or let's say even in those countries where the human population is high, so there the spread of the disease is high as compared to those countries where the population density is low. Predation is also one of the important issues. Then the toxic waste. So the more and more waste are generated, it will affect the population. And also there are some intrinsic factors. So this is a particular graph here which shows the population size on the x-axis and the percentage of young sheep producing lamb. So that is on the y-axis. So it shows that there's decreased reproduction at high population densities. So if there is high population density, let's say here 500 or around, let's say 580, so there's less and less lambs which are produced. And if you look at the lower values here, let's say 250 or 300, there are large number of sheep who are producing lambs. So it's a kind of density dependent birth. So 1.4 is the competition for the resources. So in crowded population, increasing population density intensified competition for resources and results in a lower birth rates. So if you look into this particular example here, so in a field, let's say this is a wheat image. So in a field, if the seeds are sown very close, the wheat, barley, or any kind of millet, if they are very close, their plants will grow very closely. So very closely, it means now there will be competition for resources. So the competition for resources, so it will either lead for the lower birth rate. It means what? That the less plants will grow. Some of those seeds, they will not even grow. So, and also, even if the plants grow, there they will not, these plants will not be so healthy, and the seeds that will be produced by those plants, they will also not be that healthy. So in a way we can say, in those areas where the seeds sown are very close or large amount of seeds are sown, so there the production is less. The quality of seed is also very unhealthy as compared to areas where they are sown at a proper distance. So toxic waste. So accumulation of toxic waste can contribute to density dependent regulation of population size. So let's say, for example, uh, if you are doing culturing of, let's say, E. coli or any kind of bacteria in a flask, in a test tube, let's say, so that test tube has a volume of 5 ml. So now in 5 ml, initially the bacteria will grow at a lag phase very slowly, and once it has adapted to that particular environment, now it will grow at a logarithmic phase, a very fast phase. So after growing to a certain level, now it will stop, the division will be less. And if we keep that culture for longer duration, the organism will start dying because of the accumulation of the toxic waste, and also because of the lesser availability of the nutrients. So third point is the predation. So as a prey population builds up, predator may feed preferentially on that species. So it means what? That if in a specific area, if the prey population, let's say for example, there is an example of these fishes. So these big fishes, they can feed on small fishes, tadpoles, shrimps, those kind of organisms. So if the population is going up, so these predators, they could have a choice to feed on. So in a way, these predators, they are kind of dictating the population of those particular organisms in that particular area. So intrinsic factors. So some of the intrinsic factors are the physiological effects. So some organisms, they could produce only one offspring. Some they could produce on 3 or 4 offspring. So it depends what the physiology of the organism is. The second point is the next point is the territoriality. So in many vertebrates and some invertebrates, there is a competition of territory. So that may limit their density. So the tigers or the lions, they would like to live in a particular territory. And usually they tend to define their territory by releasing some kind of waste products there. And once they have defined their particular territory, they try to defend their territory. They won't allow other organisms to come into that particular territory. Disease is one important parameter. So population density can influence the health and survival of organisms. So in dense population, pathogens can spread more rapidly. So now all of us at this particular situation, we know that this COVID-19 pandemic is going on and more people are being affected. So this particular disease is spreading in those areas more where the population density is high. In those countries where the population density is high, this particular disease is spreading at a rapid pace as compared to those countries where the population density is less. There are few countries in the world which are not having any COVID cases. One of them is New Zealand. The rest, all the countries in the world, they are reporting either less or large numbers. So it depends. So the disease spread is also one of the density dependent parameters.